Fobs click red and green. Hemline arbiter beckons. Face paint stains the bricks. I have just haiku'd you. In 2003, a decade ago, our oldest son Bobby began his 4-year career at Taft, and it's been longer than that since I last gave a morning meeting. The reason is that my role then involved making lots of announcements in assembly, and probably once a week I embarrassed my son. I thought I was amusing, but Bobby didn't. Our younger son, Will, avoided the problem by going to Berkshire, but I got out of the habit of speaking to students, and as some wit once noted, I had nothing worthwhile to say. But it's nice to be back up here, or as you might say, I'm not going to lie. Though I just use that expression, I hate it because it seems so obvious. I encourage all of you to consider giving a meeting because, as Mattie Olmsted noted on opening day, public speaking is daunting, but we all need to confront that fear which triggers sweaty palms, a dry mouth, and a racing pulse, symptoms I associate with being 15 and trying to talk to a girl. Though a decade is clearly longer than 2 years, the fall of 2011 also seems a long time ago. Then I knew most of the students at Taft. Now I know less than half of you, and those in the front, the seniors, were mids, still trying to figure things out, still in the initial stages of their Taft career. But you have figured things out for the most part, and are now far removed from those earlier years. But I feel a disconnect, because I missed that formative time when you came into your own. More to the point, after 23 years as an insider at Taft, I've returned as a bit of an outsider, not quite in sync with or as connected to the community as I was. Much as you seniors will felt initially, and how you will feel next year when you begin college. In the same way, that disconnect may apply to many of those in the balcony who are new. One of the more revealing aspects of our sabbatical was being temporarily severed from a normal routine and unsure how to reestablish ourselves. A challenge apparent when Mrs. Campbell and I left Watertown and moved to our house in Vermont, where we knew a few people, but did not enjoy Taft's built-in community. Though we tried to integrate, the process was slow, and we often felt we were strangers in Vermont, as well as during our travels, and I'm not going to lie. Oh, sorry, I won't do that anymore. The beauty of a sabbatical is that it affords the opportunity to travel. Among other ventures, we spent time in Italy, North Carolina, Tennessee, Arizona, and a weekend in Montreal that was cut short because our oldest son shattered his humerus bone in an arm wrestling contest. You know, we as parents warn our children of life's dangers, drinking and driving, not spending more money than is in the bank, and sex. But warning them not to arm wrestle wasn't until now on the list. Go figure. Having had the chance to visit Europe and parts of America that neither of us had seen, I can tell you that the world is a wonderful place and it's worth exploring. Leaving the complacency of a secure environment can be awkward, but complacency can quell enthusiasm, suppress risk, and create an inward focus. In order to expand one's perspective, it is necessary to reach out for those uncomfortable situations which require a different approach. For me, the high point of our trip to Italy was actually a geographic low point, Pompeii, a vibrant city that in 79 AD was buried beneath 90 feet of ash when the nearby volcano, Mount Vesuvius, a literal high point, erupted. Let me go to the PowerPoint here. Mount Vesuvius. That the city lay buried and undiscovered for 1,600 years gave me pause. What did merchant sailors think when they anchored in the Bay of Naples a year after the eruption and discovered that a city of 10,000 no longer existed? Imagine a Roman sailor, Captain Horace, scratching his head and pondering the quiet, smoldering space that only a year earlier had eagerly awaited him and his fully laden ships. Perhaps he thought the gods had struck out at Pompeii for some unknown sin, and he may have looked guardedly at Vesuvius, thinking the immortals on that peak would target him next. Who knows? One thing is for sure, if Horace were complacent before 79 AD, he was less so afterwards. Indeed, acceptance of the norm was true for most Romans in 79 AD, who felt their world was secure for eternity. In the heart of that once vast empire, Rome, we spent several days noting both the 21st century aspects of that city, thriving businesses and buildings under construction, and the symbols of Rome's former greatness, among them the Colosseum. For us, and I mean all of us, that ancient structure is a reminder of the glory of human achievement, but also a lesson in humility. If Rome raised our awareness of mankind's capacity to master his environment, if only for a few hundred years, and his arrogance in overlooking the threat of decadence, then Arizona raised our sights to the power of nature, the true eternal force, as evidenced by the Grand Canyon. Back to the PowerPoint. No pictures or words can capture the magnificence of the canyon and its rock formations that predate human existence. The same is true for the Appalachian mountain range, a landmass formed 480 million years ago that in its infancy rivaled the Alps and Rockies in height. Yet that range's present-day modest peaks are further testimony to the fact that nothing, neither solid earth nor teenagers, is immortal. It is a point worth considering, and it is the point Mrs. Campbell and I noted, and we took the time to consider the inherent but transitory beauty of each stop in our travels. We were aliens, visitors who saw for the first time what the locals saw as routine. That I witnessed those natural and man-made phenomena from an outsider's point of view made me appreciate that I often overlooked what Taft has to offer. By the same token, many of you think you are veterans in Watertown and have figured out the school and its idiosyncrasies. Others are just beginning to catch the melody that many can sing in full. But neither group should be content, because at some point, all will leave the comforts of Taft and experience the discomfort of change and a new stage of life. So prepare yourselves now. If you've walked by Mr. McMullen's office, you may have noticed a sign on his door that says, "Be nice." A colleague once suggested that the handbook could be distilled to that one short, imperative sentence. One simple declaration that, if followed, will enable you to conduct yourselves admirably. But like the Grand Canyon, that imperative is layered. At first glance, be nice may mean to talk openly and be accepting. But the more subtle text is to actively engage others. And isn't that really the crux? To ask questions of others, to put others at ease, and to listen? Such a strategy worked for us wherever we went. All it took was one or two questions to make our audience feel as though he were important, and that what he had to say about his town and its features mattered. The fact is that people feel you are attractive if you make them feel attractive. Getting them to open up is the key, so ask questions and listen. Focus on creating a dialogue, not a monologue. If you smile at me, I will understand, because that is something everybody, everywhere, does in the same language. As Stephen Stills of the band Crosby, Stills and Nash sings in Wooden Ships, smiling makes a difference, and a sincere smile cuts across cultural barriers and is a great equalizer when traveling or in an unfamiliar place. And by the way, I don't know if you realize how unusual it is or how special it is to walk down the halls at Taft and be greeted by students and faculty passing by. Try saying hello sometime to someone on a city sidewalk or even at another school and see what kind of reaction you get. Of course, a smile and the curiosity that leads to a dialogue don't always ensure an easy friendship, and struggling with being ignored, persecuted, or fitting in are trials many of us have faced. which is why they are themes common in film and literature. There are some great stories about upside down or just plain weird cultures, among them the Mysterious Island, Planet of the Apes, and Lord of the Flies. But I vote for either Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz. Both focus on a protagonist who navigates through a bizarre, often hostile world. A young girl sees a rabbit checking his watch, mumbling about being late. And the next thing she knows, she's down the hole and up a creek. That both the Beatles and Jefferson Airplane wrote songs referencing Alice in Wonderland is testament to Lewis Carroll's genius. Yet, since Satan, few real or fictional characters have captured the essence of pure evil as effectively as the green one behind me. Do you guys know who that is? Who is it? Wicked Witch of which? Of the West. Yes. The Wizard of Oz's Wicked Witch of the West appeared on screen in 1939, and for nearly 75 years she has sparked nightmares for children and some adults. Certainly she was Dorothy's special horror, and her ability to deal with such an adversary marks Dorothy as a compelling person in an unfamiliar word. In addition, The Wizard of Oz is just a classic movie with a ton of outstanding lines, many of them attributed to the Cowardly Lion. I know I digress here. Sorry, is that what happens when I digress? He asks, what makes the hot in Hottentot so hot? What puts the ape in apricot? And my favorite is, trapped like mice, rats. But back to Dorothy, who grapples with a witch, is mystified by munchkins, but really feels out of her element when she meets three unlikely creatures, a scarecrow, a tin man, and the aforementioned Cowardly Lion. Most would throw in the towel at that point, but Darcy perseveres by overlooking their differences and finding a common ground. By subordinating her own desires and highlighting her companion's strengths, Dorothy empowers them, and suddenly, four individuals bond and become a team. One of the movie's major themes is the danger of taking for granted things of value, home in particular, and that truly appreciating home requires an understanding of its merits. Like Dorothy, I found that traveling thousands of miles made me realize how much I value family, the camaraderie of my peers at Taft, and yes, my connection to you, Taft students. So if my sabbatical taught me to embrace difficult situations, it also showed me that it's the little things in life, friendship, family, and security, which are the things that matter most and are the foundation upon which I have the freedom to flourish. At times, however, we think we know these simple truths, but sometimes we need to be told. The Tin Man thinks he needs a heart, and his song articulates all the way he would show his love if he had a pulse. But it takes the wizard to give him the necessary perspective. Remember, my sentimental friend, that a heart is not judged by how much you love, but by how much you are loved by others. The former is internal, but the latter, the more important part, is external. For instance, consider leadership. Those in authority who lead by fear are internally motivated, and they can force others to perform a task, but the underlings will do so because of the threat of consequences. Those who lead by compassion and wisdom are externally motivated, and they command respect. Their subordinates will respond to work because they want to do the job. The extent to which you earn a reputation built on respect is a function of your willingness to give, not take. And it is that flexibility which makes Taft, like Dorothy and her crew, a community. As you go about your daily lives, think about the wizard's advice to the Tin Man and its inherent wisdom. If you can live by his words, then you will always be on the inside. Thank you.